Queensberry just destroyed Matchroom in the 5 versus 5. And I'm not going to lie guys, going into this I very much favoured Matchroom to edge this at least 3-2. In no way did I expect Queensberry to win every fight in the night, with Frank Warren winning 10-0. Well, it was kind of funny to see Eddie Hearn slowly crumble as the night went on, considering how confident he was pre-fight.
You fight with all your heart, you chase your dreams, and on Saturday night we shall be victorious without any question. Over to you, Dev. You lot are getting absolutely spanked.
You saw how pumped we were tonight. Times it by 100, and you're not even close. The black tie's coming out, the tux is on, and we're going to spank Queensberry's bottom, left, right and centre in the desert.
But all things considered, this was a tremendous night of boxing, and one where each fight really did deliver in some way. Well, I guess the Queensberry stable really shook up the boxing world, and how it progresses going forward. But let's dive into each fight and how the Queensberry fighters destroyed Matchroom, along with a look at the Bivol fight. And let's start off with the main event, Zhang versus Wilder. Now pre-fight, Big Bang Zhang had a ridiculous weight advantage of 6 to 8 pounds over Wilder. My initial thought was he would either destroy Wilder in the first 6 or start to gas out in the later rounds and get caught by Wilder's right hand eventually. Now, out of all the fights, this was probably the least eventful in my opinion. I felt both guys were very tentative. Wilder for the most part was trying to control Zhang's lead hand with his own, while Zhang was slowly trying to push Wilder towards the ropes and corners to land his own left hand or right hook. And in these positions, you couldn't help but see the massive weight difference was a real issue for Wilder. Not to mention, Zhang's punches just seemed far more impactful. However, both guys were very tentative about each other's power and not fully committing as I mentioned. Wilder would land that odd right hand himself, but it just didn't have that viciousness like we have seen from him in the past. However, in round 4 though, I felt Zhang was getting caught with the odd right hand, and Wilder's corner was pressing him to throw this more. And well, in round 5 it seemed to be working. However, this played right into Zhang's hands, who is a terrific counterpuncher.
Yeah! Good. Now right there, go with the space you got.
And Wilder threw out a right hand, leaving him off balance, and his left hand dropping, which opened him up for that southpaw counter hook, which totally put him off balance, and Zhang went in for the final kill. And well, I'm not gonna lie, it was kinda sad to see Wilder probably end his career like that. That is the case. And I really do think it's clear those fights with Fury really did take their toll on him. And it's just a real shame we will never get to see Joshua versus Wilder now probably. And I think it's a lesson for fighters and promoters. You need to strike while the iron's hot when these fights are initially proposed. However, with Turki Al-Sheikh in the picture now, I think this could be a thing in the past for a while anyway. However, credit to Big Bang Zhang, who came back with a good victory after that loss to Joseph Parker. Maybe a fight with Anthony Joshua in September is a possibility now, or even the rematch on the undercard. But it's clear that he still has more in the tank, and he definitely just seems to have that George Foreman-esque power and durability to him, and I still think he has a couple of years left in him. On the other heavyweight matchup of the night was Hrgovic versus Dubois. And going into it, I was definitely giving Hrgovic the nod, as I just felt stylistically it would suit him going into this. And going off that first round where he landed about 10 huge right hands on Dubois, I honestly felt this was going to be a short night for Daniel. However, credit to Daniel Dubois, who absorbed those shots pretty well, and it really did help him keep in the fight, as he looked to get behind his jab and get on the inside, which was definitely working against Hrgovic, who is not the best in those positions in my opinion. Hrgovic though suffered a pretty bad cut over his right eye in the second or third I believe. I think this really did affect his vision, and maybe there was an element of him trying to get the knockout early after this, as he was throwing huge power punches each time, and it quite possibly contributed him to fatigue quite quickly and gas out personally. And although Daniel was getting caught consistently with 1-2s due to his lack of head movement, he was still able to cause some problems for Hrgovic with his movement and jab, and his patience paid off as he landed a huge right hand in the 7th round against a damaged and fatigued Croatian at that point, suffering another nasty cut over the other eye. And if there was 10 more seconds in that round, I wouldn't have been surprised if Dubois got the finish. Near the start of the 8th round, the ref got the doctor to look at the cut, and he had no choice but to call it off. And for me, this was a huge win for Daniel Dubois, especially with so many writing him off, including myself. However, as much as I felt he did well to stick in there, I do think he seriously needs to work on his head movement, otherwise a bigger puncher is going to exploit that. Nevertheless, I think he showed ridiculous durability considering many people said he had no chin and it was completely over for him. But yeah, you can't not be happy for him, and I think it shows despite the loss, he's taken bigger challenges, and unlike Hrgovic, has maybe looked to just try and get that IBF title shot instead of continually challenging himself against other top contenders. But regardless, great win for Dubois, and who doesn't like a comeback story?
Every baby has a daddy, and I'm gonna beat you like I'm your daddy.
Next up, we were in the middleweight division with Sheeraz versus Austin Williams. Now in the opening rounds, I felt it was actually quite a cagey start from Sheeraz, with Williams the much more active fighter. In the second round, he actually got hurt by Williams, and you kind of just felt, was this a terrible style matchup for him at this point? However, in the third, when he actually started using that long, stiff jab of his, the fight really started to turn in his favour. And maybe this was part of the tactics to kind of draw Williams into that mid-range, as this was simply the perfect range for Sheeraz to land that jab on him, and it started to really take its toll. And because that jab was landing from Sheeraz, he then knew his right was in range as well. And at this point, Williams' corner was urging him to stop fighting at that range and try to get on the inside. But Sheeraz once again showed his maturity in these positions, using a really tight guard and not letting anything of substance get through from Williams. It was almost like Rinky Wright in that respect. While this also helped him set up some powerful counter uppercuts, as Williams was opening up to try and land something of significance, he would get timed by those powerful uppercuts and hooks by Sheeraz. And even if he tried to close the range, Sheeraz would time him with the right hand coming in. And I guess for Williams, he just couldn't apply himself at whatever range he tried to fight at. Towards the end of round 9, Sheeraz caught him with a beautiful wide right hook to get the first knockdown of the fight. And I think that knockdown in particular just showed the inability of Williams to work out how he could fight him. And with Williams clearly behind the scorecards at this point, his corner stressed that he had to get the knockout if he wanted to win this fight. But once again, this played right into Sheeraz's hands, as he was able to land a big counter right hand on the inside before he let his hands go, only for the ref to step in and call off the fight. And personally, I felt it was a good fight. Williams was actually trying to force something from the fight, but that stiff jab and timely right hand and the uppercuts and hooks on the inside were really the difference from Sheeraz. And he actually looked like a light heavyweight on the night, I'm not gonna lie. Personally, I just think it was great to see two top contenders in the middleweight division going at it. I feel this division has really been in a bit of a limbo ever since Canelo Triple G2, but it was great to see two young guys going at it trying to breathe some life into the division. And I believe Sheeraz is going to get a title shot next with the WBC, and for Amma Williams, I'd like to see more of him. I think stylistically this just wasn't a good matchup for him, but he definitely showed some heart and I believe he can bounce back eventually. Next up, we're in the featherweight division, and this was probably the closest fight in the whole card, and personally I edged it just towards Ford by a round. However, I can totally understand why you would pick Nick Ball or swing around to him in those closer rounds. And you can't deny both of them have some real heart. For the fight itself, it was a great contrast to styles for both guys. Ford, the sharpshooting southpaw who was relying on his jab to set up that left hand, while Ball was bringing that aggression to the fight, looking to land his combinations on the inside. And I guess in those early rounds, Ford was trying to kind of work out Ball, using his jab, keep Ball at bay. But for me, Ball had the much more effective start. He started a lot quicker than his last fight versus Ray Vargas, and I think that really did help him in this fight, as he was able to land some good combinations together, in particular that overhand right and uppercut. I believe it was the 6th round he landed a significant one on Ford that kind of buzzed him, and I think just that persistent pressure really forced Ford to cover up more frequently, and maybe in the judges' eyes were favouring the aggression of Ball. However, Ford was landing some good counters and body shots as he was coming into range. However, in that 7th round is where it kind of was a turning point in the fight, in my opinion, as Ford landed a huge left hand and then a left down the middle, which totally burst Ball's nose and hurt him quite badly, I think. And despite this, Ball came back and showed immense heart and resilience to keep fighting. I think Ford, personally for me, capitalised on that damage and was able to land some really sharp left hands and uppercuts in that 8th round. And with Ball bloodied and bruised, he still came forward trying to make a fight and still throwing combinations together. And personally, that final round for most was maybe a decider on who was going to win. They were both just throwing and landing big shots on each other and both refusing to back down and give up. And obviously the scorecards were very close, as you can see. I think, you can make a case for either guy. I think it was a very close fight. I felt Ford edged it personally, but I totally understand why you could give it to Ball as well. But overall, tremendous fight, and a huge congratulations to Nick Ball for winning that first world title. And I think for both guys it's an exciting future. Ford says he's going to move up to super featherweight next, and for Ball, well, there's some big fights still at featherweight. Maybe you can get the rematch with Vargas, or maybe one with Lopez. Hey, maybe Naoya Inoue will move up and challenge him for the featherweight title. And finally, we have Hutchinson versus Richards, which probably exceeded most people's expectations. Once again, I was proved wrong by a strong and versatile performance from Hutchinson. In those early rounds, Hutchinson was the man taking the lead, using his jab, switching stances, and really keeping Richards off balance for the most part, and really landing some significant punches in those early rounds. And probably by about the 5th or 6th round, Hutchinson for me was in complete control. Richards, for whatever reason, just couldn't seem to figure out what he was going to do next. However, his corner really stressed that he had to put on the pace, and Richards did show a bit more urgency in those later rounds, coming forward, trying to land the right hand on him, and try and exploit him when he was trying to change stances. However, as much as he made a little bit of a comeback, Hutchinson was still landing much more effective combinations and counters on him, and finished the fight very strongly. I think he'd never been past the 7th round, and I think in most people's eyes was, with Richards' experience in 12 rounders and the guys he's actually fought, he'd be able to take him into those later rounds and probably win the fight. However, for me, I think it was just a terrific performance and strategy from Hutchinson's to really just keep Richards off rhythm and make him fight his fight. And I think with that performance, it will do him a whole lot of good for his experience and confidence going forward. And he's only 25 years old. I think he's got a bright future ahead of him, and I'm excited to see what Hutchinson does next in the light heavyweight division. And finally, we also had Dmitry Bivol versus Malik Zinad as a bonus fight on the card. Zinad was obviously a replacement for Beterbiev, and let's be honest, he was a bit of an unknown guy. Not many people knew of him or what he was like at all, and looking at some of his fights in the pre-fight build-up, you can tell he was very awkward, rangy, and he also had power too. And as expected, I did think Bivol was going to probably take the earlier rounds to try and figure him out before fully committing. However, out of nowhere in that first round, and after Zinad actually had quite a strong start, he threw out a careless right hand where he squared up, and Bivol was able to hit him back with a quick 1-2-1 counter to get the first knockdown of the fight. Now personally, I felt after this Bivol was in complete control, although Zinad was keeping him at bay with that up jab, while he did himself actually land a couple of big right hands on Bivol. However, for me, as just the fight progressed, Bivol just showed his tactical and technical brilliance, landing sharp combinations and counters effectively on Zinad when he opened up. And Zinad was trying to get in Bivol's head, he was talking to him the whole time, and I believe it was the end of the 4th or the 3rd round, they both put their heads up against each other, and you maybe felt, was there a possibility he got in Bivol's head? However, the experience showed in that 5th round where Bivol was able to take him out. Once again, Zinad opened up, and Bivol just let his hands go and really just kept landing on Zinad non-stop, and the ref had no choice but to jump in and stop the fight. And you could tell how much that meant for Bivol to get the knockout, his first since 2018, in my opinion, had to get before this fight with Beterbiev. And Turkialishik obviously announced after the fight, Beterbiev versus Bivol will take place on October 12th, which is great to hear. But personally, I think just in terms of ring rust, this will definitely help Bivol going into the Beterbiev fight. It will obviously be a much different fight to this one in my opinion, but it was great to see him back. And for Zinad, well, I'd actually like to see more of him, as he does look like he can cause some problems in the 175 division. Personally, I think this was a great event for boxing. Obviously Queensberry got the clean sweep over Matchroom, maybe showcasing that although Matchroom maybe have a lot more depth in their roster, Queensberry does have top talent as well. And they've definitely shaken up in terms of how different fights will progress going forward, and particularly the heavyweight division. It'll be interesting to see which of the heavyweights will fight Anthony Joshua next. Will it be Zhang or Dubois, for example, as they look set to make an announcement on that at the end of June. However, personally, I just think it was great to see something different in boxing. This was something that was always fantasized about which promoters' fighters are better, and Turkialishik made it happen. And not only that, I felt all the fights were very competitive and entertaining, and as a boxing fan, that is what you want. In terms of my fight of the night, it has to go for Ford versus Ball. Performance of the night has to be Hamza Sheeraz. The knockout of the night has to go towards Big Bang Zhang. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What fight did you enjoy most, and who impressed you the most? This has been Jamie from Boxing Life. Thanks so much for watching, and as always guys, I'll see you in the next one.